Acclaimed American composer Philip Glass has withdrawn the world premiere of his new symphony, Lincoln, from the Kennedy Center, saying the institution's values no longer align with the message of the work following President Donald Trump's takeover. Glass's Symphony No. 15, jointly commissioned by the National Symphony Orchestra and the Kennedy Center, was scheduled to premiere at the Washington venue in June. In a letter announcing the move, Glass described the piece as a portrait of Abraham Lincoln and said the Kennedy Center's current values are in direct conflict with the symphony's message. He said he therefore felt an obligation to pull the premiere under the center's present leadership. The decision carries added weight because the symphony draws directly from Lincoln's 1838 Lyceum address, delivered more than 2 decades before he became president. In that speech, Lincoln warned of the dangers of mob violence, referencing murders and lynchings carried out by pro-slavery mobs, and cautioned that such forces, along with ambitious politicians seeking to control them, could threaten the Constitution and the stability of the U.S. government. Glass incorporated passages from the address into the symphony's libretto, including Lincoln's warning that mob law is never a legitimate form of justice and that a power-hungry figure could rise by tearing down institutions rather than building them. The Lincoln cancellation makes Glass one of the highest-profile artists to pull out of the Kennedy Center in recent months. The backlash began after Trump reshaped the center's board, installed allies, and named himself chairman. It intensified later last year when the board approved a legally contested name change to the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. Other cancellations have included performances by Renee Fleming, Bela Fleck, folk singer Christy Lee, and a 10th anniversary run of Hamilton. Washington's most iconic cultural institution is facing a reckoning. After more than half a century, the Washington National Opera is walking away from the Kennedy Center, triggering fresh shockwaves through the American arts world. At the heart of the rupture is a controversial Trump-led takeover. What was once a cultural landmark is now a battleground over power, identity, and legacy. The Washington National Opera has announced it will leave the Kennedy Center, ending an affiliation that lasted more than 50 years. The decision marks the latest high-profile departure from the storied institution since President Donald Trump and his allies took control. Both sides describe the split as difficult but necessary amid sweeping changes at the center. The opera said it sought an early termination of its agreement to resume operations as a fully independent nonprofit. According to its leadership, recent structural and financial changes at the Kennedy Center made the partnership unsustainable. Centralized services were reduced, funding expectations shifted, and productions were required to be fully financed in advance, conditions the opera said do not align with how opera companies function. Opera artistic director Francesca Zambello previously warned that donor confidence had been shattered following Trump's takeover. Box office revenue reportedly collapsed, and longtime supporters grew uneasy. For an art form already operating on thin margins, the fallout proved destabilizing and ultimately decisive. Kennedy Center officials said they parted ways due to a financially challenging relationship. A spokesperson said the move was meant to support the long-term stability of what is now branded the Trump Kennedy Center. The leadership insists the decision enables more responsible financial planning during a period of transition. Trump named himself chairman of the Kennedy Center and replaced its board with political allies. In December, the board voted to rename the institution the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. The move immediately drew backlash, with Democrats arguing Congress, not the board, controls the center's name. Artists, performers, and cultural groups began withdrawing from the center in protest. Critics said the rebranding politicized a national cultural space meant to transcend party lines. The Kennedy family publicly denounced the change, calling it an affront to John F. Kennedy's legacy and the values the center was created to represent. America's most iconic arts venue is at the center of a political firestorm, the Kennedy Center. A Christmas Eve jazz tradition was canceled, and now a blistering rebuke from the man running the institution. The fallout began after jazz musician Chuck Red called off his annual Christmas Eve Jazz Jam, a free concert, a nearly 20-year tradition. Red says he pulled out after seeing the building renamed to include President Donald Trump's name. Red told AP he has performed at the Kennedy Center since the very beginning of his career and that the renaming crossed a line he couldn't ignore. The response came swiftly and sharply. The Kennedy Center's president, Richard Grinnell, fired back in a formal letter, one that leaves little room for artistic disagreement. Grinnell accuses Red of what he calls classic intolerance, writing that the cancellation was a last-minute withdrawal explicitly tied to the renaming and very costly to a non-profit arts institution. Grinnell praises President Trump's leadership, crediting him with what he describes as extraordinary efforts to save this national treasure. The letter underscores Trump's new role as chairman of the Kennedy Center Board, a position approved by a Trump-appointed board early in his second term. And then comes the warning. Grinnell warned Red that the center will seek $1 million in damages, calling the canceled concert a political stunt with real financial consequences. The Kennedy Center name change followed a vote by the Board of Trustees to rename the venue for both John F. Kennedy and Donald Trump. Within hours, the website was updated. By the next day, new signage was mounted on the building itself. The backlash was immediate. Members of the Kennedy family, Democratic lawmakers, patrons of the historic center. A Democratic congresswoman has now filed a lawsuit challenging whether the board even has the authority to rename a building Congress designated in 1964 as a memorial to the 35th president.
I am bringing this to you live today because what you may hear is that there was a unanimous vote to rename the Kennedy Center the Trump Center. Be clear, I was on that call. And as I tried to push my button to voice my concern, to ask questions, and certainly not to vote in support of this, I was muted.
Here's the controversy. The Kennedy Center isn't just another venue. After John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, Congress designated the center as a living memorial to him. That law explicitly bars the board from turning the center into a memorial for anyone else or adding another name to the exterior. JFK's niece, Carrie Kennedy, has vowed to remove Trump's name once he leaves office. Former House historian Ray Smock and other scholars say any such change would require congressional approval, something that hasn't happened. Trump has taken a far more hands-on role in his second term, forcing out leadership, reshaping the board, installing himself as its head, and personally hosting this year's Kennedy Center honors. The administration frames it as a pushback against woke culture in federal arts institutions. And this is not an isolated protest. High-profile artists, including Issa Rae, Renee Fleming, Shonda Rhimes, and Ben Folds, have resigned from leadership roles or canceled events. Even Jeffrey Seller, producer of Hamilton, scrapped the show's planned Kennedy Center run earlier this year. The financial impact is already visible. This holiday season, the Nutcracker, historically a Kennedy Center cash cow, sold 10,000 seats across 7 performances. That's down from about 15,000 per year in recent seasons. Internal sales data reportedly shows the production falling nearly $500,000 short of its $1.5 million revenue goal. So this Christmas, the music stopped, but the culture war only got louder. At the Kennedy Center, the fight is no longer just about art. It's about identity. politics, and who gets to define America's cultural stage.